Anub'arak is probably the worst iteration of the anti-magic tank sub-archetype that I know of, because he acts more as a anti-burst bruiser. His crowd control is honestly pretty good, so he's at least a solid frontline, but he's lacking other tools most tanks have in Heroes. I don't think he's the worst tank in HotS overall, but I do think he is very gimmicky. His trade spawns Beetles whenever he uses an ability, which act as something to soak attacks and spells, and possibly tack on light damage to backline carries after he dives. They get more effective against carries with low attack speed since basic attacks are the fastest and cheapest ways to clear them. They can be upgraded to help with both Anub'arak's and their own survivability, which can help the most if opponents don't clear them quickly. Building for trade is probably the most consistent and easy choice regardless of the opponent's composition, but since he's a specialist tank, you want to be flexible about what you choose. His Q is a solid crowd control ability, but its travel time is pretty slow, which can be both good and bad. If Anub'arak is point blank to any opponent he wants to crowd control, it will hit, but it can also shut down opponents moving into the path as well, which is good for peeling allies or getting them off of objectives. This ability kinda ends its creative uses there, since it's just a line skill shot that stuns opponents. It's also the only ability he doesn't have a build for, since there's only 2 talents for it, but it's pretty good at what it does, so it's better to help with the other parts of the kit anyways. Anub'arak's W is a self-shield that gives him the anti-mage status, but he kinda throws away the lessons learned from other games and how a defensive ability for this archetype should be. He gains the usual spell armor, but it's tied to the shield being active. Understandable on paper, until you start thinking about it for a sec. So this is an ability that he needs to time for intentionally taking damage, that turns off his ability to tank after taking damage. It usually plays out that he activates the ability walking forward to intentionally take a spell, gets hit, loses the shield, and is now as squishy as the other members of his team. Worse yet, he can just lose his shield to basic attacks from a non-mage character and then get hit for full damage from a high damage mage afterwards. I don't want to make too many comparisons or else that's just going to be the rest of the video, but there are examples of specialist tanks working within this very game. Johanna is a very functional specialist tank in Heroes that isn't worse off for tanking as the tank class, and her specialist ability doesn't really rely on stat increases to become a tank, though that comes with its own consequences that I'll expand on when her time comes. The talents for Carapace can help make it more of a functional ability, notably Chitinous Plating, which helps with the uptime of spell armor, and Urticating Spines, which gives AoE damage on activation. Moving on to Anub'arak's E, he also has a dash that makes for a solid dive ability that helps with getting on top of mages, especially the immobile ones. He's unstoppable during the dash and stuns directly on top of himself whether he finishes the dash or ends it early. It'll also slow any target's hit, so it's easier to stay on top of anyone who he dives with this ability. You can also use this preemptively to avoid incoming crowd control abilities, but it is his only way of getting around, with the exception of a Carapace talent, Shed Exoskeleton, that gives him more speed for using it. His first ultimate is Locust Swarm, which is fine, but it's a little selfish for a tank to pick, as its primary use is self-healing and the secondary use is AoE damage. The numbers on it are fine, and it lasts a good duration, but I wouldn't really grab it unless you need to contest objectives solo for a long time. But he also doesn't have built-in self-healing like most tanks do, so it can help with the tank capabilities. I don't have much to say because his other ultimate is like most of the reason to play the character at all. Cocoon is a very good ultimate for MOBA standards, and at least pretty good for this game. It captures a target enemy hero for 7 seconds, putting them in debuff stasis the whole time. Enemy heroes can attack the Cocoon to break out the target hero earlier, with every instance of damage dealt reducing the duration by half a second. The biggest draw is that it forces opponents to choose between freeing the hero and evening the numbers, or attempting to fight 4v5 and stick it out until they're freed because they can't spare the damage. The only other choice is to back off every time Anub'arak uses this ultimate, but that could guarantee an objective or structure every single time. It can be used pretty creatively in that he can hold it if he's confident in the ability to win the fight and can stop opponents from retreating, or pop it on a solo laner and have teammates reposition to gank them once they break free. Most often, it'll be used towards the beginning of a fight, either on a carry or a healer, in order to power through and turn back on them once it's obvious his team is winning the fight. His strongest talent is probably Rewind, which is a non-character based storm talent that resets cooldowns. It can really extend his self-CC chain to a bit of a silly degree since he can cocoon someone and then crowd control them for 3 seconds alone once they're out. As a whole, his kit is not necessarily bad for fighting mages and magic damage dealers, but he really has problems with the rest of the opposing team, assuming they're using a balanced comp. Anub'arak is also extremely committal for any engage since he only has one ability to move around and one crowd control ability that he likes to be as close as possible to use. But if he has a team willing to follow up on his fairly strong engage plays, he kinda works out, but don't expect to live after trading out for their magic damage carry. All in all, his lower health and not so great defensive ability make him a bit fragile for the tank class, but he compensates with the ability to consistently get to and crowd control targets he wants.